you want to be sure that you are promoting, in a way, the quality of life for a very specific reason, enhancing your quality of life and growing it, because one of the things that we as economic developers always know is talent really is the currency of economic development.
Welcome to The Deep Dark, a business podcast where we ask seasoned minds to excavate their history, pulling out the best insights, the hardest moments, and yes, golden epiphanies. Somewhere in the stories and laughs, we all get a little smarter and feel a little better about our own business ventures. Remember, if it didn't hurt, it doesn't count. Your hosts are Chris Lyon and Tim Douglas at the Fidelis Creative Agency. So strap in and get ready as we plunge once again into The Deep Dark.
Today on The Deep Dark, we are speaking to Susan Davenport, the president and CEO of the Brazos Valley Economic Development Corporation. Susan sits with us to discuss the process of building sustained and focused actions and policies that aim at improving economic well-being and quality of life, specifically for us here in the Brazos Valley. So grab a cup of coffee and put on your thinking cap. Time to learn here on The Deep Dark.
Well, my name is Susan Davenport, and I am the president and CEO of the Brazos Valley Economic Development Corporation. And welcome to the Deep Dark podcast.
Thank you. Yes, the Deep Dark podcast. Every once in a while, I like to throw the radio, the Deep Dark podcast. But yes,
I don't have that cool of a voice, but that sounded great.
I don't either. Just that's all I can say in my radio voice. I've been working on that for years. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, Susan. I
Thank
appreciate you being here.
Appreciate the invitation.
A little flattery. We were talking about as far as Bryan College Station goes, we've had a ton of CEOs from large businesses that usually nobody knows about, right? That's part of the reason why we have them on there is many large businesses, the CEO sometimes has an invisibility problem. But everybody seems to know who you are in town. You're a lot of good speaking engagements, and especially when the EDC does their thing and you get to let us know how everything's going. So I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were saying this is probably one of the higher profile people that we've had. So yeah, thank you.
Well, the organization, I hope is, and that's our goal, to grow that and put that front and center to get things done that the community hopes to see. So,
well, what you do is so important, though, right? I mean, the one thing that we love about being in business here, and the reason that because people have tried to buy us and things have tried to happen, but we always say our job is to feed families, and we're feeding families, so we're not going to. And your job is very much the truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're here to grow opportunities for regional residents and really help solidify the regional economy and grow it. Bringing new opportunities as often as we can. Yeah.
So a little bit of that's a mystery. So tell us. So I understand that's what the EDC does, but how do you go about doing that?
Well, it's a great question. I get asked that very often.
Yeah.
There's a study of what's called economic development, and we actually have a national association that sort of trains. Basically, we go through economic development practitioner training, so to speak, in our association, both on the national level as well as the state of Texas level. Chapters throughout other states as well, and really talks about the fundamentals of economic development. And so as we look at that, it really comes down to a question of how do you create new jobs and new investment in your area? Again, so to meet the aspirations and the goals of the region, a strong, sound economy that, again, provides those opportunities that, as you so well articulated, really helps feed residents, families, people.
So important.
So important to everything that everyone does. I could sort of summarize it that we look at three ways. So let's say we recruit new businesses here. So we want to bring in additional business opportunities to complement and assimilate into everything that's here. We work to retain and expand the companies that are already here. What issues are you facing as a business? How do we help you become more profitable? That allows you to expand your business here and grow, and that in turn creates new jobs and capital investment. And then the third leg of that stool is a bit of how do you grow your own companies that, again, add jobs to the economy, complement the economy, and add new capital investment opportunities. So those three, I think, are kind of the fundamentals of what we do. And you can wrap all of that into a somewhat of a marketing and an outreach or messaging component of what you do so that the regional residents,
Mm,
families, they're aware of what opportunities are coming their way.
that's tough. Yeah.
Uh, Families with children who are being educated in this great region of these wonderful schools and higher education as well. Yet, looking at
Mm-hmm.
all of that, they can say, oh, I know that this is becoming a trend. I want to introduce my children to this. Or again, centers that are working with kids and helping, they can sort of guide them to
Sure.
regional opportunities, national trends, see what companies are here. Hopefully, we get to keep them. But we really want, our regional residents to benefit from that. So we've got a message to them. And
Sure.
that's key and important too. And that's why I appreciate opportunities like this that go out locally and beyond. It really serves two purposes. We'll tell others outside the
Sure.
region what a
It's
story
funny
there is.
because I think people
Mhm.
sometimes confuse it, right? Because
Mhm.
somehow there's this idea of, okay, the government is trying to help build business within this
Yeah.
area,
Yeah.
when really and truly it's just a partnership with business, and
Yeah.
and it's funded in multiple different ways,
Yeah.
sometimes privately as well.
Yeah.
I think that the curious thing is it is in a real way the definition of business development. Right. Many
Mhm.
people get
Yeah. It's a
confused,
great
and
thing. Yeah.
being a marketing firm, we often end up liaisoning with whatever company's BD
Mhm.
chief,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yeah.
As that goes,
Exactly.
and many people think that that's synonymous with sales, and it's not.
Very
It's
different. Yeah.
finding opportunities and partnerships, and it's the art of the deal, and it's angles, and
Mhm.
it's there. Yeah, there's some math to it, and there's
Mhm.
definitely a lot of marketing to it,
Mhm.
and yes, you probably have sales
Mhm.
that sit underneath
Mhm.
you, but it seems to be very similar. And
Mhm.
and because
Mhm.
our audience is very entrepreneurial, owning businesses many times,
Mhm.
I think that's a good way of framing what you do, as I've looked into it, is
Mhm.
that you are developing business opportunities.
Exactly. And when you are undertaking that type of work, you
Mm.
look at a region and you assess, okay, what do I have to leverage here?
Mm-hmm.
What makes sense here? What strategically do we need to do to leverage all of these assets that will equal the formula, the type of community that the
Sure.
residents and the governing bodies and elected officials and higher education institutions and schools all want to see
Mm-hmm.
happen in the
Is
region.
there an actual formula? Is
Mhm.
there actually a formula that looks out there and says we need a percentage of this and a percentage of that, and this is what we need to bring them in? And
We start with things like that data.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
We look at data
Mhm.
and we'll read that and we'll basically understand what opportunities are there, but then it becomes a bit of an art as well, I like to say. So it's going to the stakeholders and verbal kind of discussions
Right.
and understanding again what they're seeing. It's going to businesses themselves, and you'll look at the trend in their industry sectors, but then you'll also talk to local businesses in that and say, how would you see this kind of developing further the sector that you represent in our area,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so again, that's a bit of the art and the science of it. We
Right.
read a lot of data and stay on top of it, look at trends, measure our success. It's much more strategic probably than it sounds sometimes,
Yeah.
but we do carefully measure everything so that we're using the resources that it takes to do that
Mm.
and adequately leveraging everything that needs to be leveraged to get there, right?
Yeah, so I'm gonna reach way back in history
Yeah.
for me, and at the time I was doing some work for A&M, and as we were doing it, we were helping the city of Frisco,
Hmm.
Texas,
Yeah.
and I'll never forget sitting in a room with the EDC folks that were there, and the topic of conversation was how to lower the ISO for the area, and having to leverage that to help out that area to bring in big business that were worried about
Hmm.
insurance rates, right?
Hmm.
It was
Hmm.
it was very curious to see how thought out it was and how strategic it was in
Oh
every
yeah.
aspect.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
one of the three components that I mentioned a moment ago is called business retention and expansion. And so it can be um, oftentimes programs are set up, and I've set them up in my career as well, where you have, I call them talking surveys, where you
Mm,
actually can compile information that can then be put into data sets where you can crunch those numbers and then see here's the number one need by
mm,
the businesses in our area as articulated during 75 discussions of the largest employers with the highest
right.
number of employees. and what they say is the top 5 needs of the region, and what needs work and what doesn't, and what are our biggest attributes? Where are these industry sector going? Are they going?
So that helps you
So
set your
it
objectives and
helps us then, yeah, okay, back to your example, and then
mm-hmm.
this is an issue that they have identified and articulated as a problem. So strategically, how do we wrap some type of solution set of
Right.
activities, I'll call them, or strategic plan around ameliorating those issues?
Yeah.
And how do we do it cost effectively,
Right.
making sure all those pieces,
Accountability, sure.
accountability. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So what are
it's
those big issues
multifaceted.
for the Brazos Valley? Because you look at the Brazos Valley
Yeah,
as a whole. We like to say BCS, but the Brazos Valley
yeah.
is a much larger place than just.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we look at everything. I think awareness
Mm,
of the valley outside of this immediate area, I think it's a bit misunderstood, and perhaps the messaging is time now to iterate on that.
mm-hmm.
People that I've talked to tend to believe what it looked like 10 years ago is what it looks like today. And I don't think that that's not
Oh,
accurate, right?
I don't
Numbers
think
show
so.
it,
Yeah.
but
Right.
everything shows it, right? And the people that live here understand that. So we
Mm-hmm.
know that we need to take that message outside of the region, while at the same time, again, articulating to those that are here. So I would say awareness building is one of the biggest needs right now,
Right.
so to speak.
I think there was a
Um,
I think there was a somewhere we once thought that there was only one industry in the Brazos Valley, and we thought that that was Texas A&M University.
yeah.
But now, if you drive around and you just look
Yeah.
at the homes that people are buying and building, there's
Yes.
money coming from other places because a
Definitely
university
is.
salary is not going to
Yeah.
do that for you. So
Yeah.
we have to look
Yeah.
broader and go, how is the money getting here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And why and
sure.
what are the plans for it? I think the university is an excellent partner in everything that goes on here, and
Right.
they really are. When you look at the research that's being conducted there,
Hmm.
you can take that to a look at a snapshot of if we can strategically do well, which is leverage that asset, the industry that can be here. And then you come into the second thing I would think is you want to be sure that you are promoting,
Hmm.
in a way, the quality of life for a very specific reason, enhancing your quality of life and growing it. Because one of the things that we as economic developers always know is talent really is the currency of economic development. It's
Sure.
it's skilled, trained talent. And so how do we get there? You have incredible opportunities there. Um,
Yes.
the as I learned last week, which I will probably say 10,000 times this year because I'm so proud for you and with you, that the number one ranked teacher in the state of Texas this year is from Bryan ISD. So congratulations
Yeah.
to him and to them. And his area was robotics, and so that's a wonderful accolade, right? This is a huge
Hmm.
state.
Sure.
It's a wonderful accolade. And so you look at your K through 12 institutions doing well, and you
Not just
look
in
at
football. I
not
jest, but
it,
yeah.
yeah,
But we do
and
really well.
exactly,
Yeah.
very well, and
Hmm.
Blend and the partnerships and all of the things that are
Sure.
all the things that happen with those 75,000 students, which I could start on that whole opportunity that it affords
Yeah.
you and all the research. Number one research contribution throughout the state of Texas. Number one in dollars comes from Texas A&M University.
Hmm.
Largest engineering school, one of, if not the, I think it almost is, if not has reached that moment,
Oh yeah.
the largest in the nation.
Hmm.
You're talking about technological
Yeah.
advancement across multiple different fronts.
Yeah.
Those are assets that are incredibly rare,
Well, and that's why a lot of companies
incredibly
come here
special.
is, you can
Yeah,
pull engineers from here that want to be here.
of course.
And, yeah, we do the same thing. It's
Hmm.
funny talking about the engineering school growing. We were
Yeah.
having this conversation the other day to kind of make it real for the listener. I can remember back when I was going to school at A&M, how you would walk past specifically the petroleum engineering school, and there
Hmm.
would literally be people studying to tears, living on benches they hadn't slept. I mean, it was a grind to get through
Yeah.
there. What's funny is, Zachary and all the rest of the schools have grown, and it's
Yeah.
gotten huge. But you walk by, there's still a lot of tears. They're working really
They
hard.
work hard. It's
So
a hard degree.
they've
Yeah.
been able to grow that thing without, reducing
Oh,
the
yeah.
level of of how
Commitment.
commitment and strength
Yeah.
and how and academics, and it's still super tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they found it's pretty incredible how they've done that. Dr.
Yeah.
Banks just started out, did a really great job
Yeah. Yeah.
making sure that happens. So yeah,
It's a great
it's
asset.
pretty neat to see the
Mhm.
quality of people coming out of there, and then
Yeah.
with those people, what they've been able to do,
Yeah.
right? Even locally, with the bio corridor and everything else. It's really neat
Yeah.
that we have them.
I
Yeah.
think the city of College Station, city of Bryan, together with Brazos County, the university, and then our
Mm-hmm.
private industry groups that are working
Mm-hmm.
with us, the business leadership that exists here,
Right.
to invite others to come join and to really be examples of what you can achieve here. I think it was at my welcome reception at the end of June, and I began my first day July 10, but the
Okay.
week or and a half prior, they gave me a lovely reception to welcome me, which was great. And I got to meet so many different people that I would be working with. But I said at that time there were really kind of three components of what we were going to do
Mm-hmm.
to prepare ourselves to undertake the work. And really, it was basically to have the organizational structure for the Brazos Valley ED Corporation that could undertake the strategic work that we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
It needed a special little bit of a tweaking on the organizational connections that we had with our board. We
Right.
created a new advisory board. It's very nimble, but yet totally integrated into all the aspects of the community, like it should be,
Mm-hmm.
through a very special way of doing that, and then growing that investor base so that those business leaders are at the table. You
Right.
know, I always want them to be prepared to message, and that's I think the key.
Mm-hmm.
Really, is that I know this story, and I want them to know this story intimately because then they're talking peer to peer
Right.
to these companies, and that's important.
Right.
And so we arm them with the information they need. And then at the BVEDC, we have to grow a strong team that can undertake that work. And so we're recruiting the right people to come in and join us
Mm-hmm.
who are economic development practitioners as well. And I think this is an opportunity now as we look out and they
Sure.
see everything that's happening here. There's a lot of people who do what we do who are really interested in being part of this growth story, right?
Yeah.
And then on the third thing is we have to develop and deliver a message that can be provided
Mm.
throughout the country as well as internationally that speaks to people, organizations, and companies to tell them why and how they will be successful if they undertake activities in
Mm.
the Bryan College Station, Brazos County
What do you
area.
think is that biggest draw of the why? Why what is the biggest draw we have?
Yeah, I think it's the people, the talent,
Yeah.
and the talent to come. So you're sitting in such an enviable position because Texas A&M is educating that large number, but in key areas that our nation is very desirous to continue to develop.
Mm-hmm.
I know the state of Texas is, obviously, their commitment to the
Very
university and
technical in
to
those.
this
Yeah.
area. It's a need right now, I think, in multiple new areas that are
Mm-hmm.
exploding around us. And so having that talent right here to begin to think about it, internships. So when I
Mm-hmm.
said talent is the currency of economic development, everybody would love your and our talent,
Mm-hmm.
right? They'd love it. So let's be sure
Yeah.
that we are matching the two together and letting them undertake that work here.
It's
Yeah,
probably understated. We do the same thing here, and it's really
yeah,
funny because the people that work for us could probably go places and make up or six digits any place they want to go, but they start out as interns with us, and
there
they're
you go.
non-paid interns,
Great formula.
and you hang out the 90 days while you're going to school. You work
There you
that
go.
out, and now we have in fact. Our originals are all directors at this point in time, and they've
Yeah,
and they came straight out of A&M. This is the only job they've ever had. Some have been here 7-8 years.
yeah,
They're doing their thing, right? And
yeah,
it's amazing to see that talent. What's also amazing to see is what they know how to do. And what I mean by that is,
yeah.
okay, I've got gray. I probably
Mhm.
will never be as technical as they are, but the things that they can do that can drive a business,
Oh, it's impressive.
it's
Yeah,
impressive, and
yeah,
no one knows that they're behind the scenes making that happen. And in a
yeah,
marketing firm, it's needed, but people don't understand how highly technical that really is.
yeah.
Yeah,
So impressive.
it is impressive, and it all
So
comes from that
impressive.
talent that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we are working with the cities and the county to
Mm,
really say, okay, how do we even enhance our quality of life more? What
right.
do what do people and residents and family want to have in their community? How do we need to help them with strategic initiatives? Even I think with our Invest Brazos Valley companies that have
Mm-hmm.
invested in this work and are helping to undertake it, they have 4 working committees that we founded at the end of last
Okay.
year, and 4 good, strong business leaders stood up and said, "I'll work it around things like transportation,
Mm-hmm.
quality of life." Again, areas that we know are of incredible importance
Sure.
as we're moving forward. Marketing is one of them,
Mm-hmm.
and we're looking across platforms that really, what are the things that we need to do and undertake? Back to that retention and expansion, all these things kind of start dovetailing
Right.
together. But I really think those particular and type initiatives are what we can do to
Mm-hmm.
bring in more talent. I heard a business leader say one time of a particular region, I love that place myself, but I can't get anybody to move there.
Yeah.
And they were being honest
Sure.
because as a
Yeah.
business leader, you want your talent. You need it.
That's
That's
right.
it's talent is that currency of
That's
economic
right.
development.
That's
So
right.
so we focus a lot of time and
Well,
attention
they're
on that.
coming here, and
Yeah.
we used to joke back in the early
Mhm.
2000s that we had a transient population, and
Mm.
that all was based upon somebody going to grad school or doing something,
Yeah.
and they were here, and you made some really great friends who were gone a number of years later, and how
Mm.
hard that really was. That's not so much the truth anymore.
No.
No.
No, it's an
Mm-hmm.
interesting trend, and I heard a staffing agency tell me recently, it used to be, and I'm going to summarize what they said,
Sure.
I would be promoting a job here in Bryan College Station, and I would be
Hmm.
going through what the job entailed and all the different elements of it, and then I would get to the end and I would say, and it's here in Bryan College Station. You'll need to live here. That's going to be a requirement. And they're like, I would lose them. They didn't want to move.
Hmm.
They felt it was too small, or perhaps just didn't understand what
Right.
actually was here, what it felt like to be here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they said, not anymore.
Right.
They're seeking it out, and
Right.
and and that's one of those things with data, and why I think the story is so important. Data lags a little bit in time.
It does.
I am hearing from people every day who are moving in or interested in being part of it,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's not quantifiable just yet on the numbers, but
Right.
every year when you get those final numbers,
Mm-hmm.
there's a new story to tell, and
There's especially when it
yeah.
comes to marketing. I told
Uh,
you earlier before we push the record button, there's a tertiary effect that sometimes you just don't know why it happens,
mhm.
especially in the marketing world.
Yeah.
Well, you probably know why, but you can't
Mhm.
track an analytic.
Mhm.
Your gut
Mhm.
tells you, and you see it, and
A
and,
bit,
and you know that
yeah.
it's happening. But what's really funny is around here, I think that's probably happening right now. It's we see especially we probably hear, and I know how sometimes the government likes to put out economic data, and you go, yeah, I probably knew that 3 months ago, because you can get a
Mhm.
feeling from the ground, from the
Yeah.
grassroots within a
Exactly.
community,
Exactly.
and you know where it's going. I can tell you when we're
Yeah.
doing well as a community, or I can tell you when the U.S. is doing well, and I can tell you when they're
Yeah.
not doing too well based upon local how things are going,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we have our hands on that. But
Mhm.
uh, I can tell you that around here, for some reason, we are just having a ton of startups. Many of them are franchises that don't get marketing help. Many of them are
Mm.
people. We have one company. They've only been around a couple years. They're already at the $175 million mark, and they
Like
just
it
showed up with a great idea and said, "This is a great place
outstanding.
for us to plant." And it's amazing
Outstanding.
to
Yeah.
see what is happening. By the way, the idea is, I'll have to share it off air with you, but it's
Yeah.
fantastic. And I would have never
Excellent.
thought about it. Have to
Yeah.
get their permission to talk about them, but
Yeah,
I,
sure.
I
Sure.
it's there. And so that grassroots, I can feel it from the bottom, and we know it's coming,
Yeah.
especially because our phone doesn't stop ringing.
Yeah. That's a good
That's
problem to have,
it's a it's a
yeah.
it's a it's a different it's a
Yeah.
different feel when you start to choose your own clients,
Exactly.
and because
Yeah.
you're only so big. But
Yeah.
yeah, things are going well because of that, and we can tell.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Those are the kind of, I call it the buzz get
Mm-hmm.
started. Suddenly people are sort of buzzing about it. I can
Right.
remember in growth stories that I've been involved in Austin and, in Florida and different places. there's just this buzz that starts happening. And
Yeah.
people, again, are making different kinds of comments. What we saw 5 years ago, now we're seeing the opposite of growth and
Mm-hmm.
movement and things. It's
Yeah.
nice, and it just creates this buzz that you
Right.
can then know something's happening. The numbers will catch up,
The numbers
and
will
we'll
catch up.
have a story to tell around numbers,
Yeah.
but you kind of have a lot of different pieces to the
What's really also
yeah.
crazy is I was at a celebration this last weekend, and there was a number of folks that don't live here and really aren't connected. And the group of people were all talking about how they're all investing in real estate here right now because
I've heard that a lot.
because they're looking at the same data back when they
Mm,
were going to other places like Austin or, like I said, North Dallas,
exactly.
Frisco, or whatever
Yeah,
it was, going, yeah, I'm
yeah,
going to get in before it gets expensive
yeah,
because there's only so much to go around. Well, that's
yeah.
not true because we're not landlocked here like many are.
Right, right.
But
Another attribute that we
right.
have, and some resources,
Hmm.
natural resources that we're fortunate to
Right.
have, blessed to have, and so it's
That's
it's
right.
a great
Yeah.
story again when you start taking that apart and
Sure.
looking at it and looking at companies' needs and matching those things
Hmm.
together. So
I think real estate's probably the biggest indicator for me when I see that's what
it's
starts to pop.
definitely a
Yeah.
strong one. There's about 5 to 10 that you really kind of see, and that's
Hmm.
definitely a strong one. So it's a
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity.
So if you could cast a vision, what is your
Mm.
ultimate goal for the Brazos Valley and what that would look like in 10 years from now? What would you love it to look like?
Oh wow, 10 years.
Yes.
Okay, so you know, I
Or we can say
think
5. You set the
I'm going
number.
to say
Yeah.
what I think,
Okay.
and everyone would probably have a different piece of this, but
Right.
a a wonderful community
Mhm.
that has an enviable quality of life that people are aware of and is working on the technology of the future that will fuel this country and this world. And I think the researchers and scientists that are part of this beautiful community
Mhm.
can make that happen.
Yeah.
And so I would want to see it fully leveraged to do that, while again, keeping an enviable quality of life. And you can grow and keep that. And so I think one of the things we look at are, how do we stay ahead of
Mm.
some of these trends, right? How do we make sure our transportation can handle growth in the best possible way, right?
Yeah, they're constantly working on
We're
that.
always,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that, but that is
Yeah.
something you have and that's one of the committees that I was talking about
Yeah.
that's working on those pieces, right? But I think what's interesting is your position in the Texas Triangle. We've all seen the
Mhm.
data on the growth in the triangle, fueling the growth of Texas. Again, they're all here in this particular area, and
Right.
we sit in the center.
Yeah.
And that is a nice place logistically to also be, to
Mhm.
serve a state that's growing in this fashion, in this manner, and the major cities
Right.
and hubs. And I can tell you it's not lost on a lot of people that this could be a great place to set up a business to be able to serve even that growth, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's
We were
again,
we were
mhm,
on a personal note, the other day we were meeting friends,
mhm,
and we were gonna meet in the Woodlands, and so our
yeah,
friends live in because the Woodlands is a fun place to shop, right? They've got that's a
yeah,
pretty neat little area,
it's a pretty area, yeah,
and so they were coming from South Houston. Let's
yeah,
just the South Houston, whatever you want to call it, the greater South Houston area, and we're coming from here, and
yeah.
they're like, "How long is it going to take you to get there?" And I was like, "Oh man, with that new Aggie Highway, about an hour, I'll be there." And he's like, "Don't leave for an hour. It's probably going to take us 2." Right? Talking about traffic and how long it takes because
Mhm.
Houston is 2 hours away from Houston.
Yeah.
But and yet I could go to one of the nicer parts of Houston to go do some really nice
Mm.
shopping, to,
Mhm.
to get to get out
Mhm.
for a while.
Mm.
And it was going to take me less time.
Yeah.
So, that triangle really does. And
Yeah.
as transportation gets better,
Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
yeah.
So many things are underway, and like I said, it was one of those committees that we set up, and
Hmm.
I'm very optimistic about the work that they're gonna do
Sure.
to bring the business message, again, in connection to our organization alongside
Right.
decision makers, elected officials, and help in the way that business can to make sure we can do this well as we
Yeah.
start growing and move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
What are the committees? You had transportation,
Yeah,
investment. Yeah.
transportation and marketing and
Okay.
yeah, and again, I think I mentioned quality of life,
Mm-hmm.
and then real estate was the fourth one. And so
Yeah.
those are the things that we're actually focusing in on year one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to call it as we kind of again grow
Right.
this group of business leaders because we've got lots to do, many hands make light work, and we're all going to come together and enjoy
Yeah.
something that's near and dear to everyone, right? They
It
want to see
is.
these things.
It is.
It's
And,
great.
and I know a lot of, so I may be out of bounds, but
Mm.
can you kind of give us an idea of what, maybe not names, but what kind of companies we'll see in this area in the future? And
Yeah,
yeah.
so we have sectors
Mm-hmm.
that we have developed as I'm going to call them target industry
Okay.
sectors because we're connecting them to the research and the opportunities that
Sure.
Texas A&M brings, as well as local expertise and engineering
Mm-hmm.
pieces as we work to grow the talent bases, right? So we're looking at semiconductors, and as you know, our legislature provided Texas A&M University some great funding to
Sure.
actually set up what we call the Texas Semiconductor Research Institute.
Okay.
So be on the watch for that. And again, it's the future,
Mm-hmm.
right, of chips, the future
Sure.
and that research. What's that going to look like, and what kind of advances will we see? And I can tell you that there are people very interested in that, and what
Hmm.
what will be taking place as all this gets ready to roll out
Okay.
in many ways from some additional dollars and leverage the state of Texas is
Right.
providing to all of this. So the Texas Chips Act and the semiconductor
Mm-hmm.
pieces on the national level as well. So you look at that, and then you look at life sciences. And I'll just give you an example.
Sure.
Fujifilm here,
Yes, they are.
up to 900 people now, I think
Looks
is
like
an
they were
estimate.
expanding. I drove past the other day.
$300 million expansion,
Yeah.
back to quantifying that.
Right.
And again, BioCorridor and other
Mm-hmm.
companies that are also joining them. They're not
Sure.
the only company.
It's
A
funny when you
great
say
leader.
Fujifilm, people
Hmm.
listening
Hmm.
probably don't understand
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Fujifilm is actually in a whole it's not the film that they
Hmm.
used to put in their cameras many years
No,
ago. Yeah.
it is not
Yeah.
a contract development manufacturing organization in many ways, and
That's right.
strategy and
Yes.
working to help pharmaceutical companies and
Very
those
much in the
particular for
pharmaceutical
yeah,
space.
it's pharmaceutical space,
Right.
and so they're doing a multitude of different things,
Mm-hmm.
but so pleased to have them growing here. What a great story,
Sure.
and they're
Yeah.
finding that talent and they're accessing it, and so we need to do what
Yeah.
we can, make sure they can retain and grow and
Mm-hmm.
move other people in here from their great organization
Yep.
and
Back to being, whether
yeah,
it's bio
shore up your local
or medical
company.
engineering.
Yeah, exactly.
There's your talent pool.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
And you can grab them when before they graduate, and you can have them
Exactly.
prepared. Yeah.
And aerospace and aviation.
Sure.
Also, we have great engineering expertise, but we also were granted dollars to build a hypersonic wind tunnel for
Mm-hmm.
testing around many parts that will be
Yeah.
utilized for that. I've spoken to companies to say who exactly, here's back to the strategy part, who exact who exactly would need to leverage that kind of infrastructure for testing that we should put on a short list, right?
Sure.
As we start building this cluster. And then you start from there and then you keep
So
going.
funny.
But
We do the
there's
same thing in
also
business development, right? We target
exactly,
who do we
yeah,
want to, yeah,
who and when,
absolutely.
yeah. And so that becomes part of a strategic sort of theme, but
Uh-huh.
not the only one by any stretch of the imagination. And we connect through with partners. Again, think of the
Yeah.
distance and proximity to some of the great minds from NASA and
Mm-hmm.
Houston. And so how do we partner around the state perhaps in different ways? And
Sure.
Texas A&M does that as well. And so how do we leverage
Oh,
those
they do.
relationships?
They do.
And that's always an opportunity. And energy, energy
Always.
transition.
Yeah.
Houston is doing a lot of work in that area, but and doing well. And we need to look at the Texas A&M pieces of that
Mm-hmm.
and that research, and look at who needs to be near that research in a proximity. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways that you put that forward. And again, partner
Yeah.
in many ways, and that's
And
always
especially since
great.
whether, I know that people from other schools may try to discredit me for saying this, but I've been working in energy for a long time in a lot of ways. Was kind of my niche. And I'll tell you that it's very rare that I go into a C-suite for a pitch and it's not filled full of Aggies.
It's great.
It's just the truth, right? No
Yeah,
matter,
yeah.
and
It's great.
it's really strange because you look
Fantastic.
around now. Not to say that there's not other schools there, but it seems
Yeah,
predominantly, especially with the
yeah.
engineering and petroleum
Oh,
engineering and
yeah,
other prowesses that we have.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
an amazing resource.
It's an
Just
amazing
amazing.
resource. Yeah,
Amazing. Yeah.
for sure.
Um,
But the same thing's
yeah,
true in like you said, aviation and other places. It
exactly.
seems to be all around. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's we can start with
Mm-hmm.
just some of the world-class research that goes on.
Sure.
And then companies can really understand the value proposition of being in close proximity to that.
Yeah.
And you look at states again that are
Mm-hmm.
perhaps not as amenable to type of great kind of state of Texas
Sure.
sort of business ecosystem that has been built,
Mm-hmm.
and looking at our costs of business and all the different aspects of doing business around the individual sectors, that becomes a backdrop that's
Yeah.
enviable. Enviable.
Well, what about
Yeah.
not to change subjects on you,
Yeah.
but those are big, those are great. It's going to bring
Yeah.
in good money. But
Mm,
what about the small entrepreneurial world too?
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, these entrepreneurs will be building in those sectors or others.
or
I
some.
would say
Okay.
the fifth sector that we have, and there are five, is professional services. And so when you think about new businesses coming in town
Mm,
and you see how busy you are, eventually there are all kinds of startups and new businesses that are going to need
mm,
to, or want to, I should say, be in this ecosystem to actually provide services and build their
right.
own businesses, whatever it might be. It may be technologically advanced business that works in the semiconductor area, and it's a new way to develop part of the chip making process,
Sure.
or it's service providers to these industries, or you
Mm-hmm.
name it. Someone's found a new way to do X, a more efficient way, cost effective way.
Right.
And this is the place they want to be. Why? Because it's growing and it's a place of the future.
Sure.
And I think that's just again such a value
Yeah.
proposition.
I don't. There's a lot of private equity people in this area that
Mm.
love to help. The startup.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And frankly, all over the state as well.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're in that spot. I
Right.
can't tell you how many times people reach out from the other cities, and many of them are Aggie alums, right?
Uh-huh.
And they want to be in the know.
Right.
We will take our message on the road next year, as I've said, to some strategic cities, and looking at those alumni that are in those particular regions.
Sure.
It's just as educational to them to see, oh, well, I need to check out X. There's some
Right.
things coming out of the startup world that I don't want to miss,
Right.
right? And I'm already seeing that as well. Um, the system, Texas A&M
Mm-hmm.
University system, hired a new chief innovation officer.
Right.
And of course, they're getting organized system wide, which is phenomenal,
Mm-hmm.
right? But really seeing those opportunities that we can partner with them on
Right.
to bring that together, and then private incubators, accelerators,
That's right.
educational programs. We need it all.
Yeah.
And the more you see that, the more you'll see students go, I want to try this.
Oh, right.
I think I could do this.
Mm-hmm.
And they usually can.
So
They
what?
learn along the way.
Yeah, I want to kind of jump
Yeah.
another direction. When with any business, so let's
Hmm.
just say small business like we are, the key factor for us in keep
Mm.
not only getting clients but keeping clients
Yeah.
is 100% relationship,
Mm.
right? Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to do a great job. You have a good relationship. They understand when things go wrong.
Mm.
They
Yeah.
understand when things go right. They give you credit. But in the long term, you get to be in a partnership with
Hmm.
someone, and
Yeah.
you're more than just a provider.
Yeah.
You know, y- they invite you.
It's a
They invite you to
relationship.
their strategic meetings. That's kind of where that gets. How do you keep that relationship between your organization and these companies that are coming in, where they just trust us to
Yeah.
come in and give themselves to this community?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple of key ways. One is you don't say welcome, to Bryan College Station and good luck.
Right.
You want to have your
Right.
team. We are working to build a business retention and
Hmm.
expansion team that again is constantly out among the
Right.
local community versus traveling outside the region and recruiting. You want to dedicate people to that. And I'm
Hmm.
a huge believer in that. And it it's so interesting because there have been data studies over the years, and different percentages have been said, but the majority, it's been said oftentimes, of new jobs in a region actually can come from companies that are actually expanding in your
Right.
region just as much, if not more,
Mm-hmm.
than those basically new coming in. You want both of them,
Right.
don't, no way around it, but you do need to pay very special attention to those companies here because they're here.
That's right.
Their families, their friends, their
Mm.
colleagues, they're here. And
Mm-hmm.
so they've invested, and you want to see if they're not headquartered here, you want to start visiting the headquarters. And I'm a believer in that as well, and
Mm-hmm.
saying respectfully, thank you for your investment. What else can we do for you?
Yeah. How can you?
Just
Why aren't you headquartered
what?
here?
Yeah, why? Exactly. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm putting you on a committee.
Sure.
Um, no,
Yeah.
but that's exactly the
Mm.
question, right? It's
Yeah.
we think we could do X for you. Would you want to maybe start a small division? You've already got a facility here, maybe 3 or 4 people, and see where that could go. And
Right.
we'll help all along the way, right?
Sure.
You want to be sure you do that. We'll hook you up with the right people at the universities, at Blinn, at some of the places that we have.
Right.
Making sure that you access all of the pieces you need to grow and be
That's a
successful.
big part of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds sketchy, but I know a guy does help. When
It's,
people are coming in and helping them
yeah.
navigate what's happening, and especially in a place to where there is a very large portion of this that Texas A&M drives. It is a juggernaut, right?
Sure.
Aren't they the largest university in the nation now?
They are.
Like over
Mm-hmm.
this past semester.
75.
But I mean, and in that in itself, that does
Mm-hmm.
generate.
Yeah.
And it generates energy, it generates revenue.
Sure.
But these companies that come in do just as much. And many of the
Yeah.
companies are being run by people that used to be there, right? So
A lot of familiarity at times.
there is. So you need to
Yeah.
know how to navigate that
Yeah,
and who can help
exactly.
you through that. And what
Yeah.
neat thing about this area is that
Yeah.
most people will do it never asking a favor in return. They're very happy. They want you
Yeah.
to succeed.
Yeah.
And which is, in my business life, that is rare. Right. It's
Yeah.
always give a favor, get a favor. Right. But that's
Right.
not always,
No.
I like it the other way,
There's
just
a beautiful culture in this community,
right.
and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
respectful and helpful. And how do I do things? How do I
Yeah.
include you? How do I make introductions for you? How do I help?
Yeah.
It's a
Okay, so
wonderful message.
let's
Yeah.
talk about the numbers real quick. So,
Mm.
how has this community grown over the last few years? Where are we at?
Oh, certainly. Well, you can look at your population and you're seeing different numbers
Mm-hmm.
and estimates as we go.
Sure.
But you're closing in 300,000 from a population,
Right.
right?
Okay,
And
so
I
I'm not
think
wrong when I do
that's
tell clients that.
no, I
I shoot
think
from the
you
hip and
are.
I say I think we're pushing about 300,000.
I
Yeah.
think you are, and
Yeah.
official numbers will come out, and but
Sure.
I think you
And
are
that's not
for
counting
yeah.
students, right?
Well, that's the population that claims this as their residence. So
There you go.
you may
So,
have some
right.
if they're living here,
Right.
and but many students are not.
Right.
So
So many of
so
that
we kind of
70,000 student
some of
population.
it is,
Some
yeah.
of it is.
So
Okay.
that's my estimation.
All right.
Again, you could take that apart in many
Uh-huh.
different ways, but it's a good growth story. You have a good growth curve.
Right.
Should have brought all my charts and graphs, but I won't bore you with that. But
Yeah.
needless to say, you've seen a steady increase, especially over the last decade,
Mm-hmm.
and that's impressive. And I think that I think again, the ability to probably even increase that trajectory once you put your message out there a little bit
Right.
more may surprise many people.
And total dollars in the
But
economy are enough to support that population.
well, your GDP is growing as well,
Okay.
right? Again, we've
Right.
seen that GDP increasing. We always look at those numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and then we try to look at obviously what we can month over month, year over year. We
Right.
kind of take different things apart. We look at workforce numbers, how many people work in each of those industry sectors, what do we have to start from?
Sure.
What is the growth curve looking like? We will measure things like how much investment capital is coming to the region. You can put numbers on those
Absolutely.
things, and you should. And so we're looking at a whole new data set to sort of put out there to the community.
I won't be surprised
Um,
when that number comes in pretty high.
I think it's going to
Mm-hmm.
surprise some people. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think and when we think about taking that message, in early 2024 to
Mm-hmm.
Silicon Valley, I think it's going to be very
Sure.
interesting to a lot of people that will be
Yeah.
listening to that
And a lot of
message,
it's
right?
going into tech.
Yeah.
It's pretty. You look around going really
Mhm.
tech, but yeah, there's a lot here.
And tech, you also think of advanced manufacturing. So I think sometimes people
Mm-hmm.
exclude that. If you're doing manufacturing of any sort, I can assure you there's a lot of technology in it,
Oh,
right? And there have
absolutely.
been advances in all of that. And so the beauty of having some good, strong manufacturing in your region is that the multiplier of jobs is significant for your area. Again, think about creating those
Mm-hmm.
opportunities for the residents. You want to do that, right?
Plus, I really
You,
dig building stuff. I love
regardless.
companies that build stuff.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you want to look at that and have skill levels that can be attained through all levels of education so that
Mm-hmm.
people can access what makes sense for them and their family, what their pursuits are, what their dreams
Right.
are, and 2 year,
Mm.
maybe some technical training. They may want to do that and they love it and they love working with their hands in many of the ways that manufacturing can bring.
Sure.
Or they may want a ladder and then get a 2 year degree. And I was somebody who worked my way through undergrad and grad school, right? So I
Yeah.
kind of tiered, different
Right.
pieces of work, and you have stepping stones, perhaps, if you want to call it. There's all
Sure.
kinds of terms we use for that, but that provides even more opportunities
Yeah.
within your area. So I like manufacturing for that reason, but it's technological expertise, and
Yeah.
you're really good at it. We're good at it here,
Oh, we
right?
are.
So
We are.
yeah.
Yeah. So overall,
Mm.
things are rosy. Would you say?
Well, things are ready to leverage,
Okay.
and I think the results will show. When we say rosy, we'll have a good picture of
Right.
how our messages are being received, what our project numbers look like,
Mm.
what our leads look like. There's a whole formula behind how we attract projects, and so that's another piece of strategy.
Right.
But we'll be able to measure that pretty quick and iterate it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, We have to be proactive and prepared on those areas that we know we want to
Right.
stay ahead of. Again, looking at transportation, looking at quality of life, staying ahead,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what our businesses and people want and need,
Yeah.
and making sure we're on top of those. I think we've got a lot of work to do and a lot of reasons to be optimistic, but we'll measure it and we'll see how it looks.
Yeah.
I'd say, we do it monthly, so,
Right.
we look at everything, but
Yeah.
people will start seeing things and feeling that buzz. Remember, I talked a lot about
Right.
what people will hear and see and be
Yeah.
surprised at.
Yeah.
That's good, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, hey, thanks for being with us. We've been talking a long time, but
Yeah.
I hope that the audience gets a lot out of understanding a couple things. We have a lot of listeners that they listen to the entrepreneurs that come through here, but to understand that there is a 60,000-foot view, and that this doesn't happen in some dark space where an entrepreneur just blooms. It actually takes a community that's ready to help. It
Yes.
takes the ability, whether it be a bank or whether it be private equity or whatever it be, to make that money happen. But plus, the other thing is that it is the quality of life, and that's one of the reason why
Right.
the folks that we work for seem to
Mhm.
do so good, is because everybody's in it together. So this is a great community. So I appreciate what you're
Yeah.
doing there.
Oh, well, thank you for
Yeah,
the invitation. And
yeah,
we're excited about what's going on. We're ready to go. And, if people are interested in being part of it, let us know.
yeah.
We'll find a role that you'll enjoy. And even some of the students are going to
Well,
sort of partake with us next year.
with our
So,
out of city or out of area clients, we always try to drag them in here, because not just because we don't want to have to fly all over the place, but
yeah.
because it's nice to have people close that are
Yeah.
bringing good to the earth, through their business. So absolutely,
Well, thank you for the invitation.
thank you.